Today I'll be showcasing my FMP file. First we'll start off with the context, where I completed my FMP schedule and project proposal and pitch. First I'll look into the schedule where I listed each period of the FMP, such as planning, production, and post-production. Secondly, in my project proposal, that featured my rationale discussing the skills and techniques I was using for the FMP that I developed previous in the year in other modules. My concept about a sci-fi psychological short film around 6 to 10 minutes about an android developing emotions from being mistreated, and my evaluation where I listed how I'd be evaluating my work with my reflective journal, final evaluation, and feedback from my peers and tutor. My bibliography, all the links I used in my research report to gather information, and then my pitch. Fancy of a hominoid machine, where I had my where I listed things such as my synopsis, concept, themes, audience profile, target audience, similar products, audio inspiration, schedule, primary research, secondary research, visual research, crews and actors, equipment, my audience profile, bibliography, and links to my other work. Now we'll be moving on to the evaluation, where I have my final evaluation. This is where I evaluate each section of the FMP and reviewed and reflect them. Then you have my reflective journal, where I have a reflective entry for every week discussing what I completed in that week and what I completed well and what I do to improve that work. Next we have problem solving, where I did any hypothetical problems I'd have, along with practical problems I had. One of the practical problems I had was that my actors were sick, so I had to readjust my schedule and film less than I'd planned. Then moving on, we have the presentation, which I'm completing now, the planning and production. We've got my my recce's, my risk assessment, my call sheet, and my draft and final script, where I had my beat sheet featuring each stage of my story using the hero's journey story structure. So such as ordinary world, call to adventure, refusal of the call, meeting the mentor, crossing the first threshold, etc. And then I moved on to my first draft of the script, which now final script. Fantasy of a Hominoid Machine by Alexander Vukcevich, which happens to be 3 pages long, around 3 minutes. And for this, it was longer before, but I had to shorten it and rewrite a bit due to complications such as I mentioned before. Now we move on to my research, where I've got my research report, where I looked into I know in my introduction, so I wrote like an introduction on my research report. I drafted up 3 initial ideas, and which one I ended up choosing. I ended up choosing idea 1, and I got a focus group feedback from my peers, and they listed the strengths and weaknesses And then I have my workflow where I did a basic workflow of all the work I need to complete for my FMP. And then my beginning of my textual research, where I introduced my film and what it will be based on the sci-fi genre. And then I researched into the sci-fi genre. An example is sci-fi, the abbreviation of science fiction, is a highly popular genre of media based on fictional science and technology imagined by the creator that's included in a media setting or plot or theme. I listed the codes and conventions, such as futuristic technology, a conflict between good and bad, such as special effects like glowing, the mise en scene, the cinematography, and a lot of it's done in editing. And there's a lot of non-diegetic sounds featured in the sci-fi genre. Then I moved on to psychological fiction, another genre that I would be adding to my film. I listed the psychological fiction genre is about exploring deep into a film's character's mental, emotional, and spiritual state, also known as the stream of consciousness, to create an intimate narrative and to explore the character's motive behind their actions. The codes and conventions I listed were the feeling of being watched, tragedy, moral dilemmas, the spiral where the people just spiraling more and more into despair, and the freedom code of convention is known as the epiphany, where they realize something they hadn't before. And then I looked into narratives, linear and non-linear, linear being chronological, non-linear being non-chronological. Character arcs, I introduced them. Then I listed all the moral ascending, moral descending, transformational, flat, and then I moved on to mise en scene. I listed what mise en scene is, and I listed a few examples of mise en scene. And examples I listed were Wes Anderson's work of mise en scene using vibrant colors and color theory. And then we also got other examples such as The Matrix, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and Back to the Future. Color palettes. I listed I listed the use of color palettes in film and what each colors can invoke inside the audience. And I listed each type of color palette: monochromatic, complementary, analogous, and triadic. And then I gave an example of the color wheel. And then I moved on to my character's biography, where I listed everything about them, like their age, weight, height, skin color, hair and eyes, physical traits, their ethnicity, and any additional information. Then I moved into my sources of inspiration, such as The Wild Robot, which heavily influenced this project, as I recently watched it beforehand, and I was deeply moved by the robot's like enlightenment and how they gain emotions by the end of the film. Cyberpunk edge runners due to the sci-fi aspect, which I really enjoy, as well with Cowboy Bebop. Similar products such as iRobot, robot gaining emotion and going AWOL. AI, artificial intelligence, an android who thinks he's a boy, and Bicentennial Man, a robot who yearned to become a man. Then I went on to my audience research, and I discussed the demographics / psychographics. I listed the demographics such as age, ethnicity, whether they live in a rural or urban area. Then I moved on to the psychographic profiles, such as mainstreamers, aspirers, succeeders, resigned, explorers, strugglers, reformers. I've also got an example of the 4C groups, which I used to base this research off. My target audience that I decided on was, based on the research I've done, is would say primarily be reformers, secondarily mainstreamers. The reason I believe my primary psychographic would consist of reformers is due to my unique approach towards the sci-fi genre as a result of exhibiting the psychological genre. to showcase the somewhat bizarre idea of a machine replicating human emotions due to the trauma of being abused and harassed, I personally believe will entice reformers out out of the box thinking. My primary demographic will consist of residents, students of the United Kingdom of all genders from the age of 17 to 25, secondarily people from the age of 17 to 40 from the west of Europe. I also linked the survey I completed to gather some information about my demographics and psychographics from my peers. Then I moved on to my SWOT analysis of my contextual and audience research, where I listed the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Then my pre-production research, where the typography I plan to use in my film, and the locations. The production research was my evaluation of my most and least successful shots. The post-production research was a evaluation of how I set on my Final Cut Pro's library, my evaluation of my workflow, then my evaluation and feedback on my rough edit that I got from my peers, featuring questions such as what was your overall opinion on my rough edit, which mostly received positive feedback and also constructive criticism. And then I went on to my bibliography, where I list all resource sources used to gather research in my research report. Thank you. I've listed everything. That will be all. Have a good day.